Hey folks, my name is Mo Amir and this is VANCOLOUR, British Columbia's bona fide culture and politics TV talk show. Tonight, we're midway through Distracted Driving Awareness Month in BC, but there's a ton of confusion stemming from both local law enforcement and ICBC. We hope to clear that up later, but first, heralded as a crown jewel, most Vancouverites love the seawall, our city's 28-kilometer walking and cycling path that wraps around Vancouver's downtown peninsula and stretches out to Kitsilano. But for some folks, the seawall is a snooze fest. It's boring. Our first guest will explain why. He is an urban planning filmmaker whose mini documentary, How Vancouver's Waterfront Became So Boring, just garnered 250,000 views online. He is Uytae Lee. Uytae, nice to have you back on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, and pleasure to be maybe your most hated guest on your show.
We'll get into that. I mean, this film has created a lot of controversy, and not just for your performance in purple spandex.
Yeah, no, I wish that was the most controversial part about the video.
It was not. You don't like the seawall. You think it's boring, and everyone loves it. What is your case? What is your problem?
And I mean, I feel like there's of course, there's the simple answer, which is, and I say it in the video, I think the seawall, with a few exceptions, is basically like a 28-kilometer walking path. There's not much to do on it other than just walking through it.
Some of the greatest views in the world, Uytae.
It's beautiful. Don't get me wrong.
Walking path.
But no, the longer answer, and I will fully admit, as a YouTuber, you got to create that clickbait. You got to come out with a hot take just to get people in through the door.
You're trolling. You're rage trolling. You're rage farming at this point.
I'm inviting discussion, I'd like to think. But really, ultimately, my feelings about the whole seawall, it's a nuanced waterfront. There's certainly, it's hard to say the whole thing is boring, but I do think that here in Vancouver, we don't talk about it critically enough as to what sort of space it could be. Like each new section that gets built, there's just a lot of autopilot urban planning happening. Okay. And I think as a result of that, you kind of get the most sort of lowest common denominator style of urban planning, stuff that really just appeases the neighbors nearby who want it to be like as quiet as possible all of the time, don't want any sort of activity or whatever, or just something that looks pretty on a postcard. And so, I think my ultimate sort of thesis with that video was just like, hey, we should just all think a little bit more critically, have a bit more of a fruitful discussion around our waterfronts, because they're such important places. Why shouldn't we have a bit more of a conversation as to what they could be?
Absolutely. Right? And I'm all for rethinking, re-examining things that we take for granted. And I like that aspect of it. But I think when we look at the seawall in its original conception, what was the purpose? Was it active transportation to get people around the city? Or was it just like, hey, here's a cool walking path that takes advantage of our natural beauty here in Vancouver?
Oh, great question. So the original purpose was actually a little bit more, ecological.
Okay.
So you rewind to early 1900s Vancouver. The city had recently established Stanley Park after, evicting an indigenous village and, a lot of messy, unfortunate history around that, but that's besides the point right now. But Stanley Park at the time was eroding into the ocean from a combination of shipping traffic, but just also, the Pacific.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the thinking at the time was we got to protect this park. We want it to still exist, 100 years from now. And the plan originally was to just build a straight up wall all the way around it.
Okay.
Then the park superintendent at the time, his name was W.S. Rawlings, he proposed that it should also be a walking path. And so that sort of physical barrier against erosion meets some sort of leisurely walk around a park was the first sort of justification for a seawall.
So it is more recreation then, in a sense.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's certainly parts of it that happen to work pretty well as transportation corridors, but the original intention was for sure just getting people to enjoy the outdoors, right? This beautiful park, and the ocean views we have around it. And of course, then over the years, we expanded it all the way around False Creek and around the city, where arguably you could have had a bit more going on in there, but
But the core intent was recreation, and as you said, this leisurely enjoyment of the outdoors that we are very blessed with in Vancouver. So why do you want to fill it with businesses and vape shops and God knows what to crowd that out and ruin the experience?
And I get it. And I've been getting a lot of this sort of of feedback, honestly. Like I've just like sold my soul to like big coffee
Yeah.
for wanting like cafes on the waterfront. I think a couple of things. You know, first off, just because there's businesses in a public area, I don't think, you know, nobody's forcing people to buy things. You know, it's like you're not, you know, I point to examples like Halifax, but many other waterfronts around the world, they have a walking path that's delightful to walk on right next to businesses and cafes and restaurants.
Shipyards in North Vancouver.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah. And so you can really see that they are very compatible uses a lot of the time.
Sure.
But the second thing that I don't know, like I feel like, you know, at least here in North America, we have this sort of suspicion that putting any kind of business to a public space taints it in some way. But I think in some of our favorite places to visit, I mean, like the shipyards, like it's a public space surrounded on the perimeter with businesses, and that adds to the vibrancy of the space, right?
I guess I'm just worried about certain sections of the seawall. I'm going to be a full NIMBY now.
Okay.
I'm worried about certain sections of the seawall that can't be walked leisurely because you have all these businesses and things that are hustling and bustling around it. So don't you deter from the original spirit of what the seawall is supposed to be. And please call me a NIMBY.
Listen,
if that's
okay,
the case.
yeah. You can take your take right to City Hall, Mo. I think for me, at the end of the day, I hope we can all just exercise some nuance in this sort of an issue. I think in the same way that I actually agree. Like, I mean, I'm certainly not saying we should build businesses and things in Stanley Park along that seawall. That's clearly a space that has been made very clearly with the intention of getting people out of the city, away from the sort of the noise and the busyness of Vancouver. But in the same way, like, you know, I think it'd be too broad of a brush if we were like, that has to be the type of waterfront for the whole city, you know? And, you know, and of course there are some spaces that we do have, you know, kind of that sort of activity on the seawall. I want to make sure I shout out like Granville Island, definitely one of my favorite spots in the city. The convention center, not as kind of cute and kitsy as Granville Island, but still, you know what, people go, I mean, the Cactus Club there is fine.
Yeah.
And, you know, what if we had more of those spaces in the city?
Right. I think it's going to be interesting because there does seem to be a lot of NIMBYism in Vancouver. And I know I just made a joke about that. But you also pointed out the fact that near a beach, they couldn't have a beach volleyball court because the neighbors didn't want it, right? So, so really quickly, how much of NIMBYism plays a role into stopping the progress of reimagining this and making it a fun urban area?
Yeah. For some parts of the seawall, absolutely. The concerns of residents nearby have really shaped the discourse around what that waterfront should look like. So you mentioned Sunset Beach in Vancouver's West End. Yeah, in that kind of blank patch of grass that's next to the beach. You know, there was this original plan to have some beach volleyball courts.
Makes sense.
Which honestly sounds awesome. But yeah, residents nearby were worried about, you know, the extra parking that might, you know, generate in terms of demand, dust, noise.
Right.
I guess beach volleyball, one of the more noisy forms of sports out there.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's some sarcasm I'm trying
these,
to do that.
These NIMBYs really need to be put in their place, unless it's me and it's my backyard, is what you're saying.
I mean, it's I think there's like certain political realities about the seawall now that are definitely tricky to work with. And I don't want to come out as the person that says like, hey, like, you know, those of you who bought condos or, you know, moved into residences next to the seawall because you like the type of seawall it is, like, you don't get to have that anymore. Like, I think it's a discussion at the end of the day. But, you know, what I would maybe point to that hopefully is a little less politically polarizing is like we have a lot of undeveloped sites around the seawall too. You know, around especially Northeast Falls Creek. I think that's a huge opportunity to try something different, right?
Uytae, I love it. And I love you bringing attention to this. So thank you so much for your time tonight.
It's a real pleasure, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. Folks, that was video journalist Uytae Lee. Find his YouTube channel About Here to learn more about the often overlooked urban issues right in your backyard that affect your day-to-day life. Now, after some business, it's Distracted Driving Awareness Month here in BC, but instead of awareness, ICBC and even the Surrey RCMP have created a lot more confusion. Don't worry though, we got you covered as Kyla's Court with Kyla Lee will demystify distracted driving up next.